So I want to talk more about sacred space today, and specifically when someone that's uninvited is in your sacred space. When someone invades your space. In fact, I think thinking of calling this video Space Invaders, back from that old video game. And the reason that this seems timely is that so many of my clients and in the sharing circle, it's just like as I start listening to them, it's just like there's these uninvited people in their space, and it's just like, why is this person in your space like carelessly talking about something that's so sacred and precious to you? Like, it's like, why have we allowed this, and our culture, I don't want to go on too much of a rant here, but our culture has become kind of so, predatory and like so in your business. You can even see it politically. I don't want to get too political here, but they're in our business politically, and people are just even unaware, or well, either they feel like they have a right to be in your space is the one thing, but even more common, I think, with folks that you may be hanging out with is they're unaware that they're in your space. And it's like we've lost what I used to call it kind of a sense of propriety of like, and what I mean by propriety in this sense is like having a respect for someone's sacred space. In this case, yours. Now, some of you may think about, oh, well, maybe I'm in other people's space, and that may be. But today I want to talk about people being in your space, having your space invaded, and what we can do about it. So the first step, I have like three kind of steps to this. And the first, and they're pretty evident, I mean, they're pretty obvious, but the first step is like understanding like what your sacred space is. Okay, and this may seem obvious, but what is sacred space? It's like the things that are precious to you. The things that are vulnerable, the things that maybe you have some wounding on, if you have kind of a soft spot, or you've got some trauma, or you have some self-consciousness, or you've been made fun of, or you have some wounds from junior high school is a time that can cause wounds, or childhood, and maybe you're working on it, maybe, and then there's people in there, whatever, giving you unsolicited advice or something like that. So it's like being aware of like what am I sensitive about? Maybe it's your spirituality, maybe it's sexuality, private. To me, sexuality is kind of a private thing, and so now I wanted to clarify one thing here. It's not wrong for someone to be in your space. Like if you've invited them, if you have a significant other, if you're choosing to be intimate or sexual with someone, if you're hanging, if you're choosing to share yourself with a friend, or a family member, I mean, that's intimacy. That's appropriate. I'm talking about uninvited people in your space, that like unsolicited advice, people that are in your space that you didn't invite in there. That's kind of what I'm talking about. So what is your sacred space? And, and understanding what it is. And this may require some self-inquiry, like what is important to you? What is sacred to you? What is precious to you? What almost makes you teary? What's a sensitive area right now that you don't really want, people in your space talking about unless they're people you've identified that you trust, So that's a little bit about what your sacred space is. Obviously, if you don't, it's obvious in one sense, but it's more subtle than we think, and it goes deeper than we think. So that's the first inquiry: is what is your sacred space? The second is the second step is realizing that someone uninvited is in your sacred space. Okay, so how do we know this? Well, obviously it's helpful to know what your sacred space is, like the first step, but then also it just is like the example I've already used several times is like unsolicited advice. If like and that happens a lot these days, right? Because everyone, if you notice, like everyone's a therapist now, right? We've all read these books, whatever it is, they're great books, like the Brene Brown books, and they've read all these things, and we know the Myers-Briggs, and and it's just like, oh, well, you're an INFJ, and it's like, and that's great if you've invited them. Okay, but sometimes it's like, oh, you're afraid of intimacy, and it's like, that's great if you've invited them. But so we're all like, there's a tendency where people are analyzing us, and it's like, excuse me, but, you think I'm to this or to that. I didn't invite you to that. And is that really about me, or is that more about you? And it's like, I have a coach I talk to. I have friends that I talk to. It's like, I'm not discussing whether I'm an introvert with you unless, I've asked you. Did I ask is a real thing. Did you, if someone's talking about how you are, did you ask them is a real key. Or am I getting unsolicited advice or unsolicited analysis of me? Or, or is it a family member? Parents can be bad at this. Are they telling me how to live my life? Is it my religious friend that's telling me how to live my life? Or telling me I need to find God? It's like, excuse me, but it's great that you've found God. But, my spirituality is very sacred to me, and it's something I do in my way. So please, no thank you. I'll knock on your door and say this. It just is like, it's gotten very intrusive culture. And again, I'm going on my rant, so I'll pull myself back. But it's like, so what are the feelings? There's some feelings that happen when uninvited people are in your space. And one of them is anger. Now, anger is not often a popular feeling when it comes to, analysis in psychological correctness. It's like anger. It's like, what is it? It's a secondary emotion, and anger gets a bad rap. But actually, in my opinion, the anger you feel when someone's in your space is actually a time that anger is very appropriate. Okay, it's the feeling, if someone's in your space, you may feel anger. And in that case, it's not a secondary emotion. It is the important emotion that's telling you need to get this person out of your space. And that anger, it's actually got an energy to it, right? That anger's there. Obviously, we want to express the anger appropriate. We don't want to rip their heads off, even if they may deserve it. But we can utilize that energy, right? The anger that's got that thrust, and that energy is there for a reason. That call for action is just like, anger's there. It's like, it's there so you can get them out of your space. Or, you can say, or respect my space if you want to stay. I'll get into that here in a minute. So it's like, anger's one. Feeling, obviously, feeling defensive, okay, is maybe, now that can be there can be other reasons that you feel defensive, but feeling uncharacteristically defensive about something or having to explain yourself, may be a sign, that someone's in your space. Obviously, a somewhat severe feeling of someone's in your space is if you feel violated. And that's obviously a big word, but it's a big feeling, so it's a big word. And obviously and these are like feelings, or if you're feeling really vulnerable or uncomfortable, if you're feeling sensitive, if you're feeling like someone's teasing you and you're really self-conscious and you're embarrassed, they're teasing and you start feeling embarrassed. That these could all be feeling signs that someone's in your space. So that's the second one. First step, what is your sacred space? Second is like becoming aware that someone that you didn't invite is in your sacred space. So let's move on to the third and last one here is, so what do? We now know what our sacred space is. We realize that someone we didn't invite is in our sacred space. So what do? And in my opinion, you've got two choices, or really, two healthy choices. You got all kinds of choices. Some of them maybe you're doing now, and they're not necessarily working for you. So two healthy choices are, one of two things needs to happen. First of all, they need to, the first is they need to respect, if they're in your space, they need to respect your space. And that means they need to play by your rules. Like you make the ground rules and you set the parameters for your sacred space. And if they want to stay, this is what I'm suggesting, at least this is how it is for me anyway. If they want to stay, they have to abide by your ground rules. So does that mean, so if they're a sarcastic person, and I'll talk, they don't get to be sarcastic and critical if they're in my sacred space. Okay? If they have issues with, say, men, or they think, men are bad people or men are whatever, and they start bringing that, and they may have reasons for that, and maybe they've been, mistreated by men. But if they're bringing that into my sacred space, and I'm like, I worked years to be proud of my being a man and being a healthy and getting the healthy male energy, and they're there and they're saying, oh, men are this and men are, no, that doesn't, it's like, excuse me, but if you want to be in my sacred space, let's find a way to like men, me being one of them, and same thing with women. I'm just picking that because it's me. Maybe a lot of people have issues with women. And so anyway, so gender can be a thing. And it's like they need to play by your rules. And they need, and you get to be, in a sense, you're the king or queen of your space. You set the guidelines. I call them parameters. You set the parameters. You say, in this space, we don't do that. We do this. If you want to be in my space, these are the ground rules. This is how we play in my sacred space. This is what we don't do in my sacred space. We don't make fun of, or we're not mean, or we're not whatever. You got to fill in the blank there. So there's some work here, just like what your sacred space is. There's some inquiry work here too as well, like becoming aware of what you want to happen in your space and what you don't want to happen, what you allow in your space, what you don't allow in your space. And that's something you can do inquiry about to become more aware of that. So the first thing is, if they want to stay, they got to play by the rules. The second option is if they're not willing or able to play by your rules, they have to leave. And then it becomes your responsibility to get them out of your space. Okay, however you need to do that. Well, obviously we don't want to try to be violent, but the best way, and sometimes it's just like, it's getting that then your responsibility is to get them out of your space as soon as possible. Okay, and it's like, I gotta go, or you can be more assertive and ask them, to get out of my space, or what gives you the right, or that can be great. If you're not feeling that, you can leave, or you can excuse yourself. You can act like you got a phone call and say, oh sorry, I gotta go. That may be a little more passive, but it does meet the criteria of getting them out of your space. And then you can work on your assertiveness skills and saying that. And so that is the two choices they get. They either need to play by the rules or they need to leave. Okay. And so, and then it's removing them and then being aware of who is in your space and did you invite them? And then you can invite your friends into your space, and your family and your kids and your pets and your partner, your romantic partner, and your family. They're all like, you're inviting them. It's like, come into my space. That's great. But I'm talking about the uninvited guests, if you will. Okay, so they need to play by your rules or they need to leave. So anyway, that is my video for this week. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that you have a really awesome week and this week to just maybe be aware of what your space is, if there's uninvited people in your space, and then maybe what you can do to either get them to play by your rules or ask them to leave. So I will see you in a week.